Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the state of NotebookLM in 2026, and we're going to explore why its limitations are actually its greatest strength. Now, to be clear, we aren't doing a basic feature roundup here, and this isn't a beginner tutorial. Instead, we're taking a really close look at a tool that has staked out a highly specific and, frankly, fascinating position in the AI landscape. And it's done this not because of what it can do, but because of what it deliberately cannot do.
So let me ask you something right off the bat. Is NotebookLM valuable just because it can summarize a giant stack of documents? Or is it valuable because it fundamentally changes who controls the evidence the AI uses to reason? It's incredibly easy to misunderstand this tool. If you're evaluating it purely on its ability to summarize a massive pile of files, you're kind of missing the whole point. The real advantage, the actual shift in how we work, lies in giving you total control over the evidence. And that core dynamic is exactly what we're unpacking today.
Think about a standard general AI assistant for a second. It basically sits inside this unlimited information cloud, right? It optimizes for an open-ended range and tries to answer almost anything using its incredibly broad, generalized knowledge base. While NotebookLM operates on the exact opposite principle. It relies entirely on a bounded source collection. It actually competes through deliberate constraint rather than unlimited breadth. It's at its absolute strongest when you, the user, draw a distinct, hard boundary around a very specific set of evidence and tell a machine, hey, only use this.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the value of boundaries, a new trust model, the multi-format workspace, the 2026 strategic shift, workflows and strict limits, and finally, we'll wrap up with the final verdict.
Okay, let's dive into this first concept, the value of boundaries.
The notebook is not merely a container for files. It is the product's governing idea. Now, in a general AI assistant, the model's vast pre-training is usually the starting point, so the power dynamic really favors the AI developer. But here, your selected source collection becomes the absolute center of the experience. The power dynamic shifts entirely back to you. The act of selecting those sources isn't just uploading a bunch of files to a cloud drive. You are actively shaping the reasoning process of the machine. You're literally setting the rules of reality for that specific workspace.
A coherent notebook actually becomes an intentionally constructed evidence environment. When you mix, say, specific research papers with your own raw interview transcripts, and then you add in highly specific legal policies or internal project notes, you're essentially building a custom logic engine. You're shifting the burden of reasoning away from the model's broad internet knowledge over to your highly specific project parameters. What you choose to include, exclude, or prioritize dictates entirely what the system can responsibly conclude.
But, and this is a massive but, let's be absolutely clear. Bad sources still equal bad outputs. A bounded context heavily reduces your uncertainty about where an answer came from, for sure. But it cannot magically guarantee that the underlying evidence is actually good. If your notebook is filled with outdated information, conflicting definitions, or terrible methodologies, the AI will happily and very confidently synthesize those flaws right back to you. The boundary governs the scope of the evidence, it doesn't grade it.
Let's move to part 2 and see how this builds into a new trust model.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we need to aggressively separate two concepts that often get confused in knowledge work: provenance and truth. Provenance is merely tracing a generated claim back to the exact passage that supports it. Truth, on the other hand, is the factual or methodological validity of that claim itself. NotebookLM provides these inline citations that give you excellent, precise provenance. But remember, a citation can show provenance without proving truth. Think about it. Citing a retracted, decade-old medical study provides flawless provenance, but terrible truth.
And this difference fundamentally changes the nature of your daily work. With general AI, the implicit interaction is usually just trust the model's answer. And let's be real, trusting an AI blindly is a fast track to professional embarrassment. Just ask any lawyer who submitted hallucinated case law to a judge, right? Because NotebookLM shortens the distance between a generated statement and its exact source, the interaction shifts to inspect the evidence behind the answer. You go from being a passive consumer of AI outputs to an active inspector. It creates a highly inspectable trust model, absolutely, but it is not an automatic truth machine.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the multi-format workspace.
The magic really happens when you take your single, verified project context and generate multiple representations of it. Imagine dropping a dense 50-page regulatory document into your notebook. From that one verified source, you can effortlessly spin out structured reports, data tables, flashcards, study guides, and even incredibly realistic audio and video summaries. The critical takeaway here is that these are not isolated prompt-by-prompt AI generations that might drift off topic and hallucinate. No, they are all downstream products tightly tethered to the exact same traceable evidence base that you personally curated.
That continuity of context is exactly what elevates NotebookLM from a basic document question-answering toy into a complete research-to-production workspace. It bridges that frustrating gap between simply having a massive pile of facts and actually publishing a finished, usable product. You can synthesize, compare, and produce professional artifacts without ever losing the thread back to your original bounded sources.
Which brings us to Section 4, the 2026 strategic shift.
So there is a massive strategic tension happening with this product right now. On one hand, adding open web discovery supports the broader research lifecycle, letting you pull in fresh data. But the existential risk there is that machine-selected evidence weakens the clear boundary of user-selected evidence that makes the tool trustworthy to begin with. Evolving into a deeper production system creates amazing environments for publishing, sure, but highly polished AI outputs can easily camouflage unresolved methodology issues underneath. And finally, deeper Gemini integration means your context persists across your entire work ecosystem, but the very real danger is that NotebookLM's strict source-governed identity simply dissolves into just another generic assistant experience.
So the crucial point is how we navigate this. Section 5, Workflows and Strict Limits.
If you want to preserve that source continuity, your workflow really has to be an intentional journey. First, you define a highly specific task. Then, you build a coherent source set, ruthlessly keeping unrelated documents out. You actively analyze and interrogate the claims before you ever ask for a polished output. You open those citations to verify that the supporting passage actually justifies the conclusion. Only after you have interrogated the evidence do you finally generate your polished format.
And these workflow limits exist because human judgment remains the final, non-negotiable filter. The system will faithfully summarize unrepresentative data if you put it in the notebook. It can't appraise methodology, it can't resolve complex evidence conflicts, and it certainly doesn't know what evidence is missing from your collection. Most importantly, NotebookLM cannot inherit professional accountability. The AI cannot go to court for you, it cannot get fired for you, and it cannot fail a test for you. The accountability for that final output rests entirely on your shoulders.
And that leads us to Section 6, the final verdict.
NotebookLM remains one of the most thoughtfully differentiated AI knowledge tools in 2026, but its future depends on preserving its source-governed identity as it expands into research discovery and content production. Its greatest strength is its purposeful constraint. If it sacrifices that constraint just to be more like everything else on the market, it loses its core utility.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to consider about the future of AI product design. As AI models get larger, broader, and more capable by the day, is it possible that the most powerful professional feature a tool can offer is simply the ability to draw a hard line around what the machine shouldn't know? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, keep verifying, and I'll catch you in the next one.